Before I begin on how to remove the motor, again, I'm going to run through a few notes. In order to remove the entire rear, if you've watched my other videos, we just remove this plate right over here by removing those 4 screws. After we do that, we also remove these 2 screws back here on this rear portion that protects the motor, and that releases our D block, which is right here. So D block, C block, right, going rear to front, D, C, B, A. Then once we do that, that whole thing removes, and then we remove these 2 top screws and those back here. This entire part removes. Shock tower, if we want to remove this, we would then remove these 2 along with those rear. These 2 screws will release it from here, and then these screws, there's a little nut in here, so you have to remove the nut from the shock, and then this other nut on here once you remove this tiny little cover, which is where these shocks go. All right, to remove this portion up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, this whole thing would come out. If you want to remove these, you would have to remove 1, 2, and then this would slide out, and then, right, we have these right over here, and then these 2, 1, 2, and then this whole portion would slide out. Now, I'm not going to remove that whole portion, but you could also just remove 1, 2, and then only this back part would release. So you remove these here, those here, rear bumper removes. You want to remove this cover, remove these 2 at the bottom, these 2 at the top, and then release this bumper, and then this little plate will come out. But I want to focus on the motor. So for now, I need to remove these 2 screws right over here. Now, usually there's a little rubber boot. It appears that my friend lost that little rubber boot. Not a big deal, but let's go ahead and remove the cover. Now, to adjust the slipper clutch, you do not have to remove the cover. All you do is just provide resistance to the rear 2 wheels, and then that little nut here, you just use a 7mm driver, you just tighten that or loosen it if you want it tighter or looser. It just depends on the surface. What that slipper does is it takes stress off of the components, off of the transmission. All right, here we go. And this is our slipper system. I will go over the slipper system, how to remove it, but before, it's just these 2 screws. These 2 screws will release the motor. What you want to do is remove them if you have to remove the motor, or keep them on. Just loosen them if you are changing the pinion. And then use a binder paper, just a strip of binder paper, stick it in between, and then you can move the 2 gears together, and then go ahead and tighten. Spin this, spit the paper out, and you're good to go. Now, you can also do it by eyeballing an earring, just by hearing it, sorry, and there should be a little bit of play, and it'll sound like that. Now, if you add massive amount of power, let's just say you go to 4S, replace the 48 pitch, because you're just going to destroy these. There's not enough meat in the gears. So you will want to go to a 32 pitch at least, maybe even mod 1. Mod 1, those are strong, but at least a 32 pitch. This is just running the stock 2S system. All right, now to replace the pinion gear, there's going to be a little oppressor screw. So see that little oppressor screw, set screw. Go ahead and remove that, and then this will come out, and then stick the other one in. But you're going to have to loosen the motor so that this goes side by side. I don't want to mess with meshing it for now, and I've done some other videos on how to mesh it. But in order to do this, I'm just going to grab on here, and I will be removing this one from here. Let's see, here we go, 7mm driver. And I'm just going to pull it all the way out. So that's going to come out, and then once you do that, you're going to have this little metal thing. Now notice the shape. That flat side, that's where the nut goes, and then the other side, that little hat portion, that's where the spring sits. So I'll go ahead and remove the spring to show you. So that goes inside of the spring, just like that. That's a little note, something to keep in mind. And once you remove that, all of this will just come up. So if you needed to remove these, you would just remove them. Now, one of the nice things is there isn't a pin because this has a flat side. So the shaft has a flat side. It will just go in there. So you need to make sure that you lined this up with the flat side here. And then that'll slide in, slide out. I'm not going to touch these, but these are the friction pads. Those they're stuck with adhesive. And this is what creates the slipping motion. That's something that we have. Now, originally I was planning on not removing the motor, but maybe I will. And the only reason why is because I'm thinking of just taking apart the transmission. So let me go ahead and access the transmission. Maybe I'll do it on another video. But the wires will go in through here. And that is it. All right. I'll go ahead and do the transmission. Let's go ahead and do that. All right. Go ahead and remove the shock tower. Which just means that I'm going to show you how to reinstall the slipper in another video. So we have 1 and 2. Right in here. So that will separate these shock towers, you can see. But I need to remove these 2 screws inside. So there's a screw in here that has to come off. And there's a screw on the other side, I believe. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just a long one. We will see. But I do believe there's a countersunk screw on the other side. That one's already loose. Let's see. I thought it was loose. It was coming out and then it pushed in. See, pushes in. All right. So with this screw, I'm just going to use my finger here to aid. You can also use pliers, and you can just use the pliers. Don't grab onto the screw, you're just putting them on the head and you're applying pressure here as leverage to push the screw out. That's all I'm doing. I'm just aiding the screw and walking it out. So it's just one really long screw, that's all it is. All right, perfect. So again, I was just holding it here, and then as I was doing this, I was just moving this out. All right, and now this should be loose here. All right, shock tower is loose, that portion is loose, and now I just have to remove these 2 screws, and I'm going to remove the entire section. So this is the fastest way to remove the entire section. Maybe I'll just remove the bumper and then I'll just do one video dedicated to that transmission. It'll be easier. And there goes. Okay, at least the screw's still on the driver. And that is it. I'm just going to remove this link just to keep all of this attached. I don't need to break this down. I've already broken that stuff down. But this is it here. So now for the transmission, I'm going to go ahead and remove these two. That way I can isolate the transmission. The reason why is the transmission is two halves. So I want this to be released, or else I will not be able, if I leave this plate on, I will not be able to separate the two halves, as the halves open left and right, and this is locking them together. And so that is it. All right, so here I have the transmission. Transmission has been fully removed. At this point, I should be able to just leave the motor on. If I just remove this plate, I'll isolate it completely. Let's go ahead and remove these two screws. I think I said two, I meant three. Sorry. See, this is what happens when you do things at 4 in the morning. It's not 4 in the morning. I could say it's 4 in the, oops. I could say it's 4 in the morning somewhere, but it's not. Why? Okay, let's pretend I'm in a time zone and it's 6:30. 6:36. It's not going to be 4 in the morning somewhere. It's going to be 4:36. Or maybe 4:06. Right, depending if they go a full hour, half hour. There we go. Perfect. So I just left the motor on this aluminum plate, and here's the transmission. So on the next video, I will open this up and then just show you what the internals look like, and then we'll assemble it back up. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment below. I'll catch you in the next one. Subscribe if you haven't. Cheers.
What? Oh, my hair! My tongue! My rod!